A laugh cut through the courtroom, sharp, arrogant, echoing where laughter shouldn't exist. Everyone turned. The defendant wasn't nervous. He was amused. "Judge Judy can't touch me," he said loudly, smirking as if the whole room were beneath him. "I'm a sovereign citizen. She has zero jurisdiction." The gallery stiffened. The bailiff's hand hovered near his belt. And Judy slowly set her pen down, a move so small, yet somehow more dangerous than shouting. In the next 45 seconds, she would turn that laugh into silence, and that smirk into regret, because arrogance doesn't survive long in a courtroom built on truth. But before we get into it, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and hit subscribe for more shocking courtroom moments. The moment he lifted his hand, palm out, like he was stopping a car, the entire courtroom seemed to exhale at once. "I am a sovereign citizen," he announced, voice booming with the confidence of a man who had practiced the line in the mirror. And for a split second, you could almost believe he thought those words made him untouchable. The camera drifts across the gallery. Raised eyebrows, exchanged glances, a teenager whispering, "Oh boy, one of those." The lighting feels too bright, harsh enough to expose every pore of arrogance on the defendant's face. He squares his shoulders, savoring the attention the way small men sometimes do when they think they've found a loophole in the universe. Judge Judy doesn't speak. She doesn't have to. Not yet. She leans back in her chair just slightly, eyes narrowing with the precision of a hawk circling in silence. The soft rustle of her robe sounds like a prelude, something ancient waking up. The defendant mistakes her quiet for uncertainty. That's his first mistake. "I do not consent to your jurisdiction," he continues, now gesturing broadly as though delivering a closing argument in a courtroom he invented. His voice rises with each phrase, climbing a staircase of self-importance. "I stand here as a free man, under common law, not under this corporation masquerading as a court." The bailiff shifts a half-step closer, not aggressive, just ready. The audience reacts in small, satisfied murmurs. They've watched this show long enough to know arrogance is a spark, and Judy is dry timber waiting to ignite. Still, she says nothing. Instead, she watches him ramble, watches him posture, watches him reach for every pseudo-legal buzzword he can remember from the corners of YouTube comment sections. It doesn't rattle her, it almost seems to amuse her. The camera cuts to her face, expression unreadable, but undeniably alive. She's hunting, and he doesn't even realize he walked into the open field. He waves a sheet of paper in front of her bench. "This document right here proves you have no authority over me." It flutters in his trembling hand, the corner slightly bent, like even the paper itself is embarrassed to be involved. Judy tilts her head. Not a reaction, an assessment. The complainant shifts nervously beside him, unsure if she's watching a legal proceeding or the slow-motion collapse of someone's delusion. Her hands twist together in her lap. She looks to Judy for grounding, for sanity, for order. But Judy still waits. When the man finally pauses to take a breath, the silence lands like a dropped brick. She leans forward, just an inch, just enough to freeze the air. "Are you finished?" It isn't a question, it's the sound of the floor disappearing beneath him. His smile twitches, just barely, as if he suddenly realizes he has no idea what happens next. He slams the stack of papers onto the podium so hard, the top sheet slides off and flutters to the floor. "Everything you need to know is right there," he declares, tapping the pile like it's holy doctrine. The courtroom reacts with a soft ripple, anticipation and disbelief twisting together. The camera shifts to Judge Judy, who hasn't moved more than a breath. But her eyes, sharp, glinting, track the fallen page as it drifts, landing upside down, revealing nothing but disorganized text, a metaphor in motion. The defendant clears his throat dramatically. "These documents are legal notices under the Uniform Commercial Code. They invalidate any and all authority you think you have over me." He says it the way children repeat phrases they've heard adults say, hoping confidence will hide the misunderstanding. Judy finally sits forward, elbows resting lightly on the bench. The lighting shifts, subtly, cooler, harsher, catching the edge of her glasses. "Bring them here," she says. Her tone is calm. Too calm. He hesitates. Sovereign citizens rarely surrender their props. But under her gaze, he approaches, clutching the papers like a security blanket he's not ready to lose. The bailiff intercepts him halfway, retrieving the stack and placing it neatly in front of Judy. She flips the first page. Silence expands. The only sound is the soft rustle of paper as she turns another page and another and another. Each movement deliberate, each page turn an unspoken verdict. "These notices," he says louder, trying to fill the void, "state explicitly that I operate under natural law, not maritime authority." Judy raises a single finger. He stops mid-sentence. Her voice is smooth steel. "Sir, this is a small claims court, not a boat." Laughter erupts in the gallery, quick, involuntary. The defendant flushes a deep, blotchy red. She continues flipping until she reaches a sheet with dense blocks of text highlighted in neon yellow. She scans it briefly. "This section," she says, tapping a highlighted paragraph, "is copied from a website that has been debunked more times than I can count." He stiffens. "That is your opinion." She looks up, expression razor sharp. "No. That is reality." The audience goes still. He tries again. "You are ignoring my legal framework." "Ignore?" Judy interrupts, her voice a scalpel. "I'm reading every line, and every line says the same thing. Nothing." He opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. The complainant shifts, voice trembling slightly as she says, "Your Honor, does any of that even mean anything?" Judy closes the folder. The sound is soft but final. "It means he's hoping if he dazzles us with nonsense, we'll forget why we're here." The defendant looks like someone just kicked a leg out from under his entire performance. Judy folds her hands, eyes locked on him with chilling precision. "Let me tell you what actually matters here." The echo of Judy's last sentence, "what actually matters here," is still hanging in the air when she pivots sharply toward the complainant. "Tell me what he did," she says. It slices through the room like a reset button, snapping the trial back to reality. The complainant, a woman in her early 40s with tired eyes and paint smudges on her jacket, takes a shaky breath. She's been waiting for this moment, though the tension has knotted her shoulders tight. The camera pulls in close as her fingers twist together, knuckles whitening. "Well, Your Honor." Her voice wavers, then steadies. "He hired me to repair the water damage in his basement. We agreed on the price. I finished the work. But when I asked for payment, he told me I needed to invoice his, natural person?" A ripple of confused laughter trickles through the gallery. The defendant steps forward abruptly. "She contracted with the corporate fiction of my name, not the living man before you." Judy doesn't even turn to look at him. "Sir." Silence. That single word hits him harder than anything she has said so far. He recoils slightly, as if the reality of authority has started burning through the paper armor he brought with him. The complainant continues. "He said unless I addressed the invoice to his sovereign entity, he wasn't obligated to pay me. And I didn't understand what that meant. I still don't." Judy's eyes soften for the briefest moment. Not pity, clarity, recognition. She's seen this pattern before. Good people confused, taken advantage of by someone hiding behind jargon thick enough to suffocate accountability. The defendant huffs loudly. "She is misrepresenting the terms of our agreement. There was no meeting of the minds." "Because you were deliberately fogging the room," Judy snaps, finally turning to him. "Every time someone tries to explain your obligations, you hide behind invented rules. That's not law, that's evasion." His mouth opens, closes, like a fish unsure how oxygen works. Judy motions for the complainant to continue, guiding her with calm, steady questions. "How long were you working on the repairs? Did he ever express dissatisfaction? Was there any dispute before the bill came due?" Each answer paints a picture more damning than the last. Weeks of labor, perfect communication, until money entered the conversation. Then suddenly, sovereignty, jurisdiction, maritime law, and everything else he'd copied from internet forums. The camera widens to capture the defendant's posture. He's no longer standing proudly. He's leaning, almost bracing himself against the podium. The sovereign mask is slipping, the edges fraying like old stitching. Judy's voice cuts in, quieter now but sharper than ever. You're not using this nonsense because you believe it. You're using it because you think it protects you. A murmur swells. Even the defendant seems momentarily stunned, like she reached into a part of him he never intended to expose. Judy leans back slowly, eyes narrowing, not at his words, but at something else that doesn't quite add up. Something in his behavior that doesn't match the script he's performing, and she intends to find it. A bead of sweat rolls down his temple, catching the courtroom light as Judy lifts a single sheet of paper. You said you've never acknowledged this court, she begins, voice almost polite. Then explain this. The defendant freezes. The camera zooms in on the page, his handwriting, unmistakable looping initials curling at the bottom like a signature trying to outrun itself. The gallery tilts forward in collective anticipation. Judy's tone is deceptively mild, the kind of softness that hides a blade. This is an email you sent to the clerk's office 2 weeks ago. You requested a continuance and addressed it to the jurisdiction of this court. A few whispers escape the audience. A woman in the back covers her mouth. The defendant swallows hard. That's not, he stammers, that's not a legal acknowledgement. I was forced to send that under duress. Judy arches a brow. Duress? You sent it at 3:14 a.m. Nobody was forcing you except maybe insomnia. A flicker of laughter ripples through the gallery. His face tightens, jaw ticking with irritation. He tries again, scrambling. I meant my corporate persona sent that, not me, not the living man. Judy leans forward, eyes narrowing like a camera adjusting to perfect focus. So your corporate persona writes emails at 3 in the morning asking for court dates, but the living man standing in front of me owes people money? The defendant opens and closes his mouth, words failing to assemble. The sovereign mask, carefully rehearsed, stubbornly maintained, begins to crack along the seams. Judy flips to another page. The sound is sharp, like a whip. Here's a message where you thank the clerk for confirming the new hearing time. She holds it up, shaking it lightly for emphasis. You thank the court, the same court you claim has no jurisdiction. The complainant watches, breath caught, as if witnessing gravity shift. The defendant grips the podium. I never consented. You're twisting. This is all misinterpretation. No, Judy replies, voice cool as polished stone. This is contradiction. On the record. The camera pans to the bailiff, arms crossed, expression unreadable but attentive. The tension in the room tightens like a rope pulled taut. Judy's gaze returns to the defendant. You can't have it both ways. You can't use the court when it benefits you and then reject it when responsibility arrives at your door. His bravado shrinks, inch by inch, as the truth corners him. Judy glances to the clerk, who steps forward with a manila folder. Something else was entered this morning, she says, placing it gently on the bench. Judy opens it. Her expression changes. Not dramatically, just enough for the courtroom to feel the shift, the way a storm warns you before it breaks. She lifts her eyes to the defendant, gaze sharpened to a point. Sir, she says, voice low, electric. Would you like to explain this, or should I? His jaw drops. Not much, just a fraction of an inch, but enough for the entire courtroom to feel the shift. Judy reads from the newly opened file, voice smooth and merciless. According to this, you filed a civil complaint in this court last year. The world seems to tilt. The defendant's pupils constrict. His posture stiffens. For the first time, the swagger evaporates, leaving something raw and unarmored beneath it. Judy lifts the document between two fingers, as if presenting Exhibit A of his unraveling. It appears, she continues, that when you wanted money, this court suddenly had plenty of jurisdiction. A gasp cracks through the gallery. The sound is sharp, electric, like a fuse burning toward an explosion. The defendant sputters. That's not the same. That was... He stops. His face contorts. He searches wildly for footing that no longer exists. Judy finishes the thought for him. Convenient? The room hums with tension. Even the fluorescent lights seem to buzz louder. The defendant grips the podium, knuckles whitening. You're twisting things. I was misled. I didn't understand the process. You understood it well enough to sign your name, Judy counters, tapping the section where his signature curls in bold ink. Funny how jurisdiction appears and disappears depending on which direction the money is flowing. A low murmur sweeps the room like a wave. He tries again, though his voice has lost its earlier thunder. That wasn't me, I was forced by the system. Sir, Judy interrupts, tone suddenly quiet, too quiet. Lying only works if the truth isn't written down. He looks at her, not as a sovereign citizen, not as a man defending an ideology, but as someone who realizes the stage he built is collapsing plank by plank. The complainant watches him with a mix of vindication and disbelief. She seems almost smaller in her seat, the weight she's carried finally shifting outward into the room. Judy sets the file aside with surgical precision. You have a pattern, she says. When you want something, you're perfectly willing to use the law. When someone wants something from you, suddenly you're a citizen of whatever imaginary country absolves you of responsibility. His breathing hitches. For the first time, he looks genuinely frightened, not of Judy, but of being seen. The courtroom feels colder now, as if the illusion he clung to was the only source of warmth he had left. He takes a step back from the podium, a small step but telling. The mask is not just slipping, it's crumbling. Judy glances at the bailiff, then back at him. I think it's time, she says, to hear from someone who knows you beyond today's performance. His head snaps up. Confusion flashes, then dread. What? Who? The side door creaks open. A figure steps in, arms crossed, gaze steady, and his face drains of all remaining color. She's here to testify. The door hasn't even fully opened before his voice cracks into a frantic whisper. No, she can't be here. But she's already stepping through, steady, composed, and carrying the kind of truth he can't outrun. She walks with the calmness of someone who's survived storms bigger than this courtroom. Early 30s, sleeves rolled up, work boots still dusted with drywall. The camera glides past her determined stride before landing on the defendant, who looks like a man staring at his own reflection in a funhouse mirror, watching himself shrink. Judy acknowledges the woman with a nod that says, "Proceed." "State your name," she directs. "Melissa Heron," the woman replies, voice firm, no tremor, no hesitation. "I worked with him for 2 years." The defendant's breathing quickens. "She's biased. We had a disagreement." Melissa doesn't even turn to him. "We had a pattern of you not paying people." A collective murmur rolls through the gallery. Judy's eyebrow lifts, but she remains still, letting the weight of Melissa's words settle like dust on a forgotten shelf. "Explain," Judy instructs. Melissa folds her hands behind her back. "He did this to 3 contractors before her. Promised payment. Then when the bill came, suddenly he was a sovereign citizen who didn't recognize currency, contracts, or obligations." Her tone is clinical, almost detached, proof she's told this story before. The defendant slams his palm on the podium. "That is a mischaracterization of my beliefs," Judy's voice whips out like a command. "You do not interrupt a witness in my courtroom." He recoils instantly. Melissa glances at him, just once, just long enough for pity to flicker in her eyes. Not sympathy. Pity. The kind you feel when someone refuses to see the hole they're digging. "He was good at convincing people at first," Melissa continues. "Confident, charming, knowledgeable sounding. But when payment came due, he always found a new philosophy to hide behind." The camera cuts to the defendant. His mask isn't slipping anymore, it's splitting at the seams. His eyes dart from Melissa to Judy to the floor, as if searching for a loophole in the tiles. Judy leans forward, fingers laced. Is this true? The question isn't for Melissa. It's for him. He opens his mouth. Nothing comes out. Melissa adds quietly, "He doesn't believe this stuff, Your Honor. He just doesn't want to be held accountable." It lands like a hammer on glass. The defendant's shoulders twitch, a physical flinch of exposed truth. He finally manages a strangled, "You don't understand." Judy stands. A collective shiver moves through the room. She rarely stands. Her voice, when it comes, is low, controlled, and devastatingly precise. "Oh, I understand perfectly. And now, she continues, I think it's time he understands what real law sounds like. The room holds its breath. Tell me in the comments, at what point does confidence become deception? The courtroom goes silent the instant Judy stands. It's the kind of silence that isn't empty. It vibrates, charged, like air before lightning strikes. She steps toward the edge of the bench, hands clasped behind her back, posture regal and immovable. The defendant watches her approach the moment as if approaching a cliff he didn't see on the map. Let me make something abundantly clear, she begins. The first second drops like a stone into water. Her voice is sharp, not loud, but precise, surgical. You do not get to redefine the law because you don't like what it asks of you. A ripple of tension shivers through the gallery. Second 10, she points to his stack of pseudo-legal papers. This nonsense has no force, no authority, and no meaning in a court of law. You can quote the internet until your tongue falls out. It won't change the facts. He shifts, fingers twitching against the podium. He looks suddenly small. Second 20. She leans forward, cutting the distance. You entered into a contract. You received work. You owe money. Sovereign fantasies do not erase real obligations. Each word lands like a hammer tapping nails into a coffin. Second 30. You used this court when it suited you. You hid behind fictional doctrines when it didn't. That's not sovereignty. That's manipulation. Her gaze is unflinching, a floodlight burning through every lie he's wrapped himself in. Second 40. You are not above the law. You're not outside the law. You're not some independent nation in sneakers. You are, like everyone else in this courtroom, responsible for your actions. The room erupts in held breath, the air tightening like a knot. He looks disarmed, stripped, exposed. His chest rises and falls in frantic, shallow breaths. And then, second 45. She steps back, lifting her chin, voice quiet but devastating. You came here thinking you had power over reality, but all you've done is prove how afraid you are of it. Silence. Not one person moves, not one sound rises. The defendant sways slightly, as if the gravity around him has changed. The sovereign identity he clung to like a shield now lies shattered at his feet. His pupils dart everywhere and nowhere, seeking an escape that doesn't exist. Judy returns to her seat with unhurried grace, the echo of her footsteps the only sound in the room. He finally manages a whisper. You don't understand. Judy looks at him with calm, razor clarity. Oh, I understand perfectly. He straightens suddenly, a strange, desperate smile flickering across his lips. Fine, he says, reaching into his pocket. Then I guess it's time I show you the evidence you haven't seen. He smiles. Not the smug, performative grin he wore earlier. This one is thinner, sharper, carved from desperation. I have evidence you aren't aware of, he says, and the courtroom stiffens, like someone just pulled a fire alarm. He reaches slowly into his pocket. The bailiff tenses, stepping forward, but the defendant holds up a small black object between two fingers, a thumb drive. Relax, he says, though his voice warbles. It's just proof. Proof that he points at the complainant without looking at her, lied. The complainant recoils slightly, blinking hard as if bracing for another blow she's already too tired to absorb. Judy doesn't flinch. Hand it to the bailiff, she orders. He hesitates. Just a fraction. A flicker of reluctance that only someone paying exquisite attention would catch. Then he places the drive gingerly into the bailiff's palm, as though it's a fragile artifact that will exonerate him the moment it's plugged in. The bailiff carries it to the clerk, who inserts the device into a secure review terminal. The courtroom hush deepens, stretching thin like a wire ready to snap. The defendant stands taller, inhaling slow, savoring the illusion of regained control. You'll see, he says louder now, projecting confidence that doesn't quite stick. You'll see she manipulated the whole situation. I recorded everything, every conversation, every agreement. You'll see she's been lying from the start. Melissa, the unwanted witness, watches him with a frown, not fear, not anger, but something quieter. disappointment. Judy folds her hands. Is the clerk reviewing it? The clerk gives a small nod, eyes scanning the screen. The defendant paces slightly, 3 steps to the left, 3 steps back. He's rehearsing vindication, imagining the moment the tide will turn. The sovereign persona begins creeping back toward his posture, feeding on the possibility that he might still come out ahead. You know, he says to Judy, I expected more professionalism from this court. The way you've treated me. Sir, Judy cuts in, we're not done yet. A beat. A long, stretching, fragile beat. The clerk suddenly pauses, hand frozen above the keyboard, their brows knit together as if they've encountered something off, something wrong. Judy notices instantly. Her gaze sharpens. Clerk? She prompts. The clerk leans in, clicks something again, then looks up, face tight, controlled. They stand and walk to Judy, leaning in to whisper. The defendant sees the whisper, and panic flashes behind his eyes, too fast to hide, too real to dismiss. Judy's expression hardens but subtly, like a temperature drop, not a storm. She straightens in her chair, fixing the defendant with a stare so still, so surgically focused, it feels like the room tilts around her. Sir, she says quietly, we have a problem. She slides the thumb drive back across the bench toward the bailiff. This isn't evidence. A beat. It's something much worse. Judy's fingers rest lightly on the thumb drive, but the gentleness of the gesture feels terrifying. The room senses it, like the pressure drop before a storm. Sir, she repeats, voice steady. We have a problem. The defendant swallows hard. What problem? The evidence speaks for itself. It does, Judy replies. Just not the way you think. She nods to the clerk. The overhead monitor flickers to life, illuminating the courtroom in a cold blue glow. The gallery leans forward instinctively, drawn to the digital stage where truth, real truth, lives. The screen displays a list of video files. Their names look official at first glance, but then Judy points to a small column on the right. Timestamps, creation dates, modification history, metadata. Do you see this? She asks, though the question isn't a question at all. He squints, confused. What about it? The files were created, she says, tapping the screen with a pen, last Tuesday at 3:12 p.m. So? His tone is defensive, brittle. So, Judy continues, that was 2 days after the alleged conversations took place. A wave of murmurs sweeps the gallery. The defendant blinks, rapidly, like his mind is short-circuiting. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe the upload time. Not upload time, Judy cuts in sharply. Creation time, original file creation, which means the videos didn't exist before Tuesday. His mouth opens, no sound emerges. The clerk clicks on another field. The metadata expands, revealing editing logs, software signatures, and a trail of digital fingerprints leading unmistakably to one conclusion. Judy reads aloud. Application used, ClipForge Pro. Editor username, M. Carlin. The defendant's full name, his exact username. The courtroom feels it, the pivot, the collapse, the moment the last support beam under his narrative gives way. Melissa exhales softly, almost sadly. The complainant clasps her hands to her chest. The bailiff's expression blanks into that neutral stoicism officers wear when misconduct is unfolding. The defendant shakes his head violently. No, that's not possible. Someone hacked, someone framed me, my laptop, my files, anyone could— Stop! Judy's voice slices through his panic. Do not insult the intelligence of this court. He freezes. You created these videos, she says, each word deliberate, and edited them. You attempted to falsify evidence and present it as truth. No. He grips the podium hard enough his knuckles turn white. I was trying to defend myself. She lied. I had to. You had to fake proof? Judy asks. That's your justification? His gaze darts wildly, at the monitors, at Melissa, at the complainant, at the clerk, seeking a single sympathetic witness. He finds none. Judy leans back, eyes colder now. What I want to know, she says, is why you went this far. What exactly are you trying to hide? The question lands like a spotlight cutting straight through him. His lips tremble, not with anger, but with something dangerously close to fear, and he whispers, "You don't want to know. If you were sitting in that courtroom, what would you think he's still hiding?" He grips the podium as if it's the only solid object left in a room that's dissolving beneath him. His eyes dart from Judy to the clerk to the glowing monitor and back again, wild, searching, unmoored. The sovereign facade has collapsed. What remains is raw survival instinct. "Someone hacked my laptop," he blurts. "That's the only explanation." His voice cracks on the word hacked, like even he doesn't believe it. Judy doesn't respond immediately. She lets silence stretch, lets it settle over him like a heavy coat he can't shake off. The courtroom feels suspended, held in the quiet gravity of his unraveling. Finally she says, "Your metadata tells the truth. Your excuses do not." He shakes his head violently. "You're all in on it. You, her, everyone here. She's been trying to sabotage me for months." The complainant recoils as though he's thrown something at her. "I've barely spoken to you outside of work," she whispers, voice trembling. He laughs, a hollow, fractured sound. "That's what makes it so easy for you." The gallery murmurs in discomfort. Melissa steps forward slightly, jaw tightening. "This isn't sabotage," she says. "This is what you do when you get caught." He spins toward her, pointing with a trembling hand. "You think you know me? You don't know anything about me." Melissa doesn't flinch. "I know the pattern." Judy taps her gavel once, sharp, commanding. "Enough." The single word freezes him mid-breath. She studies him, and the camera closes in on her eyes, steady, discerning, compassionate in a way that makes the defendant seem even more lost. "Sir," she says, "you're fighting shadows. The truth is in the record. Your behavior speaks louder than your theories." He slumps slightly, as though she's pressed directly on a bruise he's been hiding for years. Judy continues, voice lower now, less punitive and more diagnostic. "You falsified evidence because you were afraid." "No," he whispers. No. "Afraid of responsibility," she adds, leaning forward. "Afraid of being seen. Afraid of losing control." His lips part. He doesn't deny it, not because he accepts it, but because the words strike something buried deep under years of deflection. Judy turns to the clerk. "Bring me the earlier emails again." The clerk retrieves the folder, placing it before Judy with ceremonial precision. The defendant's eyes widen, panic flickering like a small flame gasping for air. Judy flips through the pages, her expression tightening, not with anger, but with revelation. Her gaze lifts back to him, intent, searching. "There's something here," she murmurs. "Something I didn't see before." The room stills. Even the lights seem to dim around the moment. Melissa leans slightly forward. The complainant grips the edges of her chair. The defendant's breath becomes ragged, uneven. Judy closes the folder slowly, deliberately. She fixes him with a gaze that feels like an unlocked door swinging open to a darker room. "Tell me," she says quietly, "why do you use the exact same language every time you run from accountability?" Judy's eyes sweep over the email printouts like a detective revisiting a crime scene. But this time, she's not looking at the content. She's looking at the pattern, and the realization sharpens her posture. She taps one of the pages lightly. "This phrase," she says, tracing the line with the tip of her pen, "I do not consent to obligations." Her voice is soft, but the room tightens around it. "You use that exact language in your correspondence with the clerk." The defendant's shoulders tense. Judy reaches for another sheet, flips it, and places it next to the first. "And here, in your communication with the complainant." Another page. "And here, when you refused to pay Melissa." She lays the papers down in a neat row like stepping stones across a river of denial. "And here." She pauses, eyes narrowing. 2 years ago, in a written dispute with a supplier. Melissa shifts in her seat, surprised. The complainant's brows furrow. The gallery murmurs at the pattern emerging like footprints in fresh snow. The defendant's jaw tightens, the muscles twitching as if trying to hold back a tremor. Judy leans in slightly, her voice now hushed with precision. You repeat the same line every time you run from an obligation, every time someone expects you to be accountable, every time you fear consequences. He grips the podium so hard his knuckles strain white. You don't understand, he mutters. It's not fear, it's principle. Judy doesn't buy it. Her gaze is too steady, too knowing. Principles don't change based on convenience, she replies. But your sovereignty only appears when you owe something, never when someone owes you. He looks away, toward the monitor, toward the wall, toward escape routes that aren't there. Melissa speaks softly, almost reluctantly. He said that phrase to me the day he closed the business, when he left me and 2 others unpaid. The defendant flinches. Judy nods slowly, absorbing the confirmation. So this wasn't a sudden ideology. This is learned behavior. Her words hang heavy, like a curtain about to drop. The defendant's breathing grows uneven, and for the first time, the courtroom sees something flicker behind his eyes. Something old, something wounded, something he has kept buried beneath layers of bravado and pseudo-legal jargon. Judy studies him with a gaze more empathetic than before, though no less firm. Tell me, she says quietly, where did you learn to fear responsibility? He stiffens violently, as if she has touched a nerve that has never been exposed in public. He doesn't answer. He can't. Judy lifts the earliest email again, reading the familiar phrasing aloud, tasting something in the rhythm that clicks into place. Her expression changes, deepens. A memory surfaces in her eyes. She sets the paper down with slow, deliberate care. Because this language, she says, voice low. I've heard it before. From someone very close to you. The words hit him like a body blow. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just true in a way that bypasses the mind and punches straight into the ribs. He staggers a half-step back from the podium, breath catching in his throat. Judy watches him carefully, not as a judge sizing up a defendant, but as a human being recognizing a pattern older than the case in front of her. She lets the silence breathe. It's not empty. It's a doorway. Finally she asks, Your father taught you that line, didn't he? The defendant's eyes close for a fraction of a second, but the flicker is enough. A confession without words. The gallery leans in, not hungry for drama, but touched by the sudden rawness in the room. Something has shifted. The arrogance, the bluster, the pseudo-legal language, all of it seems to wilt around him like wet paper peeling off the wall. Judy softens her voice, though not her authority. Years ago, she says, a man came into my courtroom, angry, defensive, certain the world owed him everything and he owed nothing in return. His eyes open. There is fear in them, recognition, memory. And he used those exact words, Judy continues. I do not consent to obligations, like they were some kind of spell that could make consequences disappear. The defendant sinks slightly, his shoulders folding inward as though bracing against a cold wind only he can feel. Judy rests her hands on the bench. I didn't know until today that he was your father, but the pattern is unmistakable. Melissa looks down, guilt and empathy mixing in her expression. The complainant bites her lip, a hand pressed to her heart. The defendant's voice, when it finally surfaces, is small. He always said responsibility was a trap, that people would use it to control you. Judy nods slowly, her expression neither indulgent nor condemning, just deeply, painfully human. And you believed him. He was my father, the defendant whispers. His lower lip trembles. What else was I supposed to believe? There is no mockery now, no deflection. Just a grown man standing in the ruins of an instruction manual he inherited long before he ever understood the cost of following it. Judy steps into the moment with a steadiness that fills the room. Your father didn't teach you freedom, she says gently. He taught you fear. Fear of responsibility, fear of being accountable, fear of admitting mistakes. A tear gathers in the corner of his eye, held there stubbornly, as though even crying feels like surrender. I didn't want to be like him, he says, voice breaking. I thought if I claimed sovereignty, I'd be different. Judy shakes her head softly. No. You didn't escape him. You repeated him. The words land with devastating clarity. He looks at her, eyes shining with a grief he wasn't prepared to face. So what do I do now? Judy leans forward, her voice firm yet compassionate. Now, she says, you learn what accountability really looks like. The question hangs in the air. So, what do I do now? Fragile, trembling, like the first honest thing he's said all day. Judy steps forward, her presence grounding the courtroom in a stillness that feels almost sacred. Now, she says, you stop running. The defendant swallows, his gaze flicking upward to meet hers. There's no anger left in him, no swagger, no sovereign vocabulary to hide behind. He looks like someone who's wandered miles in the wrong direction and finally realizes how lost he is. Judy's voice softens, but it doesn't lose its edge. Responsibility is not a cage, it's a foundation. You don't get trapped by it, you stand on it. He breathes out shakily, eyes dropping to his hands. They tremble, just enough for the camera to catch. For the first time, he seems to see himself clearly, a man holding nothing but broken excuses. Judy continues, your father taught you to fear consequences because he feared them, but you are not required to carry his fear forward. Melissa watches him, arms no longer crossed, expression shifting from hardened judgment to something cautiously sympathetic. The complainant wipes her palms on her jeans, tension easing from her shoulders. You think admitting fault makes you weak, Judy says. It doesn't, it makes you free. He shakes his head slowly. I don't know how to do that. I've never learned. Then start here, she replies firmly. Look at the person you owe, and acknowledge what you did. The defendant turns toward the complainant. The moment is raw, unrehearsed, uncomfortable, intimate. His lips part. No words come out. Judy intervenes quietly. Try again. He takes a breath that quivers at the edges. I shouldn't have lied to you, he says, or avoided paying. He stops himself before slipping into explanation or excuse. I was wrong. The complainant's eyes soften, not forgiveness yet, but recognition. And Melissa, Judy prompts. He turns to the witness. She meets his gaze steadily. I left you with bills I should have paid. I said things that weren't true. I'm sorry. Melissa nods once, not absolving him, but acknowledging the courage in the admission. The defendant looks down, exhaling as if something heavy has finally rolled off his chest. It's imperfect, halting, messy, but it's a beginning. Judy leans back in her chair, observing him with a measured calm. Not triumph, not suspicion. Something quieter. Approval tempered by reality. This, she says, is the first honest moment you've had in this courtroom. Accountability is a practice, not a performance. He nods, absorbing each word like someone thirsty for clarity. But Judy isn't done. She lifts a folder, the complainant's invoice, the falsified evidence report, the business partnership notes, all layered reminders of the damage done. This, she says, tapping the folder, is the cost of your actions, and you're going to face that fully. His breath catches, fear creeping back in around the edges. Because understanding responsibility, Judy continues, isn't the same as accepting consequence. She closes the folder with a soft, echoing thud. And now we deal with the consequences. The soft thud of the closing folder echoes louder than any gavel strike. The defendant stiffens, as if that single sound carried the weight of years he has tried to outrun. Judy doesn't rush. She lets the tension breathe, lets him feel every ounce of what comes next. She opens the folder again with a gentler touch, spreading out the documents like puzzle pieces of a truth he can no longer deny. These, she says, tapping each page, are not abstract obligations. They are people, work, time, trust. Her tone isn't angry. It's somber, steady, carved from a place of long experience with men who've spent their lives dodging the very thing that could have steadied them. She lifts the complainant's invoice. This is the labor you received, she says. Work done in good faith, completed professionally, for an agreed-upon price. The complainant exhales shakily, holding herself still, waiting for the validation she hasn't dared believe would come. Judy sets that page down and picks up another, the falsified evidence report. And this, she says, voice tightening, is the moment you crossed a line. You didn't just refuse to pay, you tried to rewrite reality. The defendant shuts his eyes, pain flashing across his face. The lie is no longer a shield, it's a weight, dragging him down. Judy continues, more quietly now. You went from avoiding responsibility to manufacturing deception. That has consequences beyond civil disputes. It erodes trust, in your work, in your relationships, in yourself. Melissa shifts, arms no longer crossed, the rigidity gone. She watches him with a complicated blend of sadness and relief. You hurt people, she adds softly, not with ideology, with choices. The defendant opens his eyes. They glisten, not with defiance, but with the trembling awareness of damage finally acknowledged. His voice emerges rough, almost childlike. I didn't think it would go this far. Judy nods once, crisp. That's the problem with running. You never notice how fast the ground disappears behind you until there's nothing left to stand on. The courtroom falls into a hush so deep it feels like shared breath. You are going to repay every dollar you owe, Judy says firmly. That is not punishment. That is correction. She lifts the falsified evidence file again, and this attempted deception will be forwarded to the show's producers and the relevant authorities, not to destroy you, but because accountability must be complete. He nods, swallowing hard. The fear is still there, but something else has joined it. Acceptance. Judy softens her tone, just a fraction. You asked what you're supposed to do now?